Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 20th, 2021 rescheduled work session of the Gaston County Board of Commissioners. My name is Tom Kieger. I serve as chairman of the board as well as one of the commissioners of Gastonia Township. I'd like to welcome our viewers and thank Spectrum Cable and AT&T for making this possible for our citizens at home. For our television and live stream audience, I'd like to start off by introducing our commissioners, starting on my far right.
Alan Fraley, Cherville Township.
Good evening, Chad Brown, Riverbend Township.
Bob Hovis, Crowder's Mountain Township.
Tracy Philbeck, Dallas Township.
Kim Johnson, Gastonia Township.
Good evening, Ronnie Worley, South Point Township.
Thank you, commissioners. Before we get into things, could I just remind folks to silence your phones, devices, what have you? And before we get going, I would like to ask our county attorney to reiterate a resolution that the board adopted, I guess 3 or 4 months ago when things sort of got kind of hectic in here with some of our speakers and the audience. So, Mr. Sink, if you would just recap that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank y'all for coming tonight. I would just note that this board did adopt rules of decorum, which simply means be respectful, if you don't mind, when you're at the podium. And I do think it's important to know we've had a couple of speakers who have kind of pushed the line on that, maybe gone beyond the line. And when we get into state law, not just the rules of decorum, but what the state legislature has done over the years, it does say that if you're up here or in the crowd and you're causing a disruption, you've been warned by either the chairman or member of law enforcement, and you do not stop or do not leave, and you don't heed that first warning, it could be a Class 2 misdemeanor. And that's all we're saying is, if you would please be respectful. We do have rules of engagement, rules of decorum for those who are speaking. Still going to be 3 minutes per speaker tonight, I believe. And so that's all we'd say is not fussing anybody. It's totally content neutral policy. And again, we appreciate y'all being here. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sink. And before we get to our first presentation, our only presentation, I'd like to ask our planning director, Brian Skiba, to come up and just maybe get us started. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening. So, Mr. Chairman Kieger and the board, I just wanted to come up tonight before we got started and kind of lay out some groundwork. That we all kind of have heard things about Piedmont Lithium, and of course the public that lives around the area has heard things about Piedmont Lithium, but I just wanted to kind of lay out what was going on and why we were actually here. So I have asked Piedmont Lithium to come in tonight to give a presentation on what they're looking to do in the area, because right now we don't know. We haven't gotten an application from them. We have been in communications with them and we have talked with them, but we have nothing laid out definitely. So there was so much swirling around in the community, and y'all were all getting calls. We were getting questions that we wanted to kind of put a point on this and kind of a place to start. So they agreed to come in to kind of lay out what was going on, and that's where we're at. So one part I really wanted to emphasize is this is a starting point. There is nothing on the agenda for y'all to vote on. That is way far in the future. This is the beginning of a reconnaissance for you and the area, for us to kind of know what's going on, for you to formulate ideas. And they have told us that they will gladly tell us what's going on tonight, let us have time to kind of digest that, and then come back and answer questions at a later date for us. So I just wanted to preface the conversation with that before we got started tonight. So at this point, I will turn it over to them.
Okay. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Keith Phillips, President and CEO of Piedmont Lithium, to take it on from here, sir. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioners. Dr. Eagle, very happy to be here. Mr. Skiba, thank you for the introduction. And thanks for everybody for coming. We're very happy there's such interest in the project. And one thing Brian mentioned, which I'll echo, and I'll really echo all of his comments, and I'll talk more about this in a minute. I know there's some concern that we've been in the region doing a lot of work, and we have. And I'm going to talk a lot about that tonight. And gee, why haven't we been here before? I'll come to that. We're sensitive to that, and there's a method to our madness. You may appreciate it or not when we're done. I will just say by introduction, it's a very complicated project. We've invested a lot of money, kind of getting to the point we're at, and we've really just got to the point where we really know today what we want to develop, and we haven't known that until the last several weeks when we've brought it all together. So first of all, I'm not going to introduce them, but I've got a bunch of teammates here in the front, a couple rows, very happy with the support. We have 24 employees at our company. I'll talk more about that today. Most of them are here today. And today I'm going to introduce the company, talk about why we're in this business, why we're here in Gaston County, and then I'm going to bring Patrick Brindle up. Some of you know Patrick. He's our Chief Development Officer. He's been project manager of the company for 3.5 years. And he's going to address some of the issues we would be concerned about if we were residents in the neighborhood. Water, noise, dust, traffic. These are entirely legitimate questions. You should ask the questions, and one theme I have in life is there are no silly questions. They're all good questions, and we aim to answer all of them. But before I do that, and tell me if you can, and for those, for the commissioners, et cetera, you guys have, I think, a screen that you can follow this. For the others, we've handed out books, if you have them. If anyone doesn't have a book and wants it, put up their hand. We have more. Okay, that's great. We have, so let me talk about why we're here today and why I'm here today speaking. And I want to be clear, we're here today because, from our company perspective, I decided this was the right time. And there's a lot of questions about why we haven't come earlier. So fundamentally, I was advised a couple of years ago, may have been bad advice, maybe I shouldn't have taken it, that we shouldn't waste the commissioners' time. We shouldn't come in front of them until we knew what we wanted to do. We shouldn't come with a half-baked set of plans, come back 3 months later, 9 months later. And as you're going to see in my presentation, our plans have evolved quite dramatically in time. All for the better in our view, all for the better for us, our shareholders, and the community, and the county. We'll talk more about that. We were scheduled to present at a March session, I believe. I actually learned about that quite late, and I thought that was a really bad idea. As you'll hear shortly, we weren't ready to present in March. We didn't know our plan. Some very important components that are now part of our plan weren't finalized then, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So really, we've spent the past year improving the project for Gaston County. And we published, and the way we are, we're a public company, just so everyone understands. We're a public company. We're listed on NASDAQ, ticker PLL. We file with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Everything we do, we have to publish. We have ongoing disclosure obligations. So we're regularly updating the market on what we're doing, and we regularly publish updated economic studies on what we intend to do, technical studies. So we published an updated scoping study on June 9th, 2021. That's on our website. We're happy to share it with anybody. And it includes a lot of new information and new plans for the company that we've been working on for some time, but really weren't developed certainly in March. They weren't ready in March, and they weren't developed before that. I'll go into more of that in a few pages. But fundamentally, a couple of the important changes are we're moving all of the operations of the project to one integrated site in Gaston County. So to be clear, this will be the only site in the world where people produce spodumene concentrate. So spodumene is the mineral that contains lithium. This will be the only site in the world where people mine spodumene concentrate and produce it and convert it to lithium chemicals on the same site. Right now, and you'll hear a little bit about this, I don't want to pick on China, 100% of the spodumene in the world is produced in Australia, 100% of it is shipped to China to be converted. We're going to do it all here in Gaston County like it was 20 plus years ago. By bringing all the operations, including our chemical plant. So we're going to produce a mineral concentrate. You take rock out of the ground, you crush it, you separate it to upgrade it to you concentrate it essentially to a 6% concentrate. That's like a gravel or sand consistency. We're going to convert that into lithium hydroxide. That's a chemical that goes into batteries. You can't drive an electric car without a battery. The batteries need lithium. Lithium hydroxide is kind of the chemical of choice. So we're bringing the chemical plant to the Gaston County site. We didn't have land for that before. We've assembled a land package now so that we've connected our quarrying operation with our concentrate plant with the CSX rail and a land package where we can build our chemical plant. That's going to bring 200 plus jobs from Kings Mountain where we have a site, and we've bought a site, we own a site, we've permitted that site, we had planned to build there. We've brought all that to Gaston County. That wasn't here. We didn't have that site in March. We have it now. We've also made very significant process improvements to make our operations the world's most sustainable lithium project. I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll show some data. It's third-party data. We've shifted our chemical plant process to be entirely sulfate and acid-free. This is what we think everyone will do in the future, but right now everyone uses a very sulfuric acid-intensive roasting process we're not going to use. That makes it better for us, it makes it better for the neighborhood and everyone else, and from an emissions perspective, it's far superior. And we're investing $63 million to install an electric conveying system. So you think about a quarry, we're going to be crushing in the quarry and bringing material up by electric conveyors, quiet, covered, dust-free, relative to what we otherwise would have done and what is done in most parts of the world, which is lots and lots of trucks going up and down ramps, which is noisy, dusty, there's no avoiding it. It's costing us $63 million up front. Now, there will be some annual cost savings, but it doesn't pay for itself, but it does, frankly, from an environmental perspective and from a neighborhood perspective. That didn't exist in March or before, so those are the things we're doing. In summary, we'll talk more about the project. It's a very large project. It's an $840 million capital investment for us. That's in the scoping study. I'll talk later, we're going to publish a definitive feasibility study on this very project. In September, the number will be refined. And we believe we'll bring approximately 500 full-time jobs with this project to Gaston County. These are great jobs. They're all good jobs. They're going to average approximately $90,000 a year of compensation, including benefits. And we're already working with Gaston County Schools and Gaston College on developing programs to enhance people's skills and career development. We want to hire local people. These are really good jobs. That's a lot of them. We also think we're going to attract, potentially, a lot of other businesses to this area. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But fundamentally, if we're producing lithium hydroxide in North Carolina, cathode plants, battery plants, maybe even electric car plants are going to come here. I'll talk more about the electric vehicle business in a minute. So just to echo what Mr. Skiba said about the timeline, I'm on page 3 for those looking at the books. In terms of community engagement, we very much view this as the beginning of our formal engagement. And I think we've done an exceptional job as a company developing the project technically, building relationships with people in the community, building up our strategy more globally. We haven't done as good a job, and I blame myself, with the community, with the commissioners, et cetera. We aim to remedy that. We're here, and we're happy to spend as much time as you'd like. But this is the beginning from our perspective. This is day one, July 20th, 2021. We believe this will be a consultation that should take place over several months. And we're here to do that. We'll be very open and transparent. It's kind of a rule of ours. If it takes longer than several months, it takes longer than several months. That's okay. We're going to be here. We'll be hosting town halls like we have before, small group meetings, one-on-one meetings. We're going to set up a website portal so people can send questions to us if they want to anonymously. We'll answer them. We're also, as part of this, we're going to begin to address a lot of the questions and concerns people have expressed directly to us in the media, in social media. I don't spend a lot of time with the media or social media, for better or worse, but a lot of what I've read is understandable comment that's pretty easy to address once we're given a chance to do that. So we're going to do that, and we're going to be as transparent as we can. And that'll be something we keep up in real time starting in a couple days, and people can monitor that. Fundamentally, I'm exceptionally proud, we're exceptionally proud of the project, and we believe the more people learn about it, the more they'll like it. Some upcoming milestones to think about from a timing perspective. There was news today, you might have seen, that we will be applying for a state mining permit. We've known that for 4 years. We've engaged with the state mining regulators for 3.5 years, and our project design reflects a lot of that. We expect to apply for that permit in August. We'll see how long it takes. That will be a process that's very rigorous. And Patrick's going to talk later about the regulatory environment. As you may know, there are very few places in the world more difficult than America to develop a project like this. It's a very rigorous process. All the questions you should ask, believe me, they're asked by regulators, and we have good answers. There'll be public hearings as part of that process. There'll be more events like this where people can ask us questions, go more technical, et cetera. We're very happy to engage in that. We're going to publish a definitive feasibility study in September, so that'll be a lot like the scoping study, but with just a greater level of detail. There won't be big changes. We know what the project is, the DFS, we call it. And the definitive feasibility study, another word is bankable feasibility study, that's what you need for a project like ours to go raise money. You need a bankable feasibility study that third-party engineers have proven what your numbers look like. Frankly, you need customers. We've been engaged with customers for 4 years. We know every auto company in the world. We know every battery company in the world. We know every cathode company in the world. If we didn't, we wouldn't be doing our job. We're going to need customers if we want someone to lend us money. We're also going to publish an economic impact study in October 2021. This has been underway for some time. Dr. Connaughton in Charlotte at UNC Charlotte is doing that work for us. He's very, I know a credible observer. This will be really interesting. We have a point of view on what the benefits to this community might be above and beyond our own project. We'll see. We'll be interested to see what he says. But we think a lot of people will benefit and a lot of other businesses. So one request I will make, there've been there's some thought that we've been presumptuous about all this and we've taken it for granted. That's not true. There's nothing about that's true. That doesn't mean we've been great communicators with the community or with the commissioners. We've known from day one we can't do anything without you guys rezoning this property. Full stop. That's obvious to us. We can't do anything without the North Carolina State receiving a North Carolina State mining permit. We've known that all along. All I would ask is for people to, rather than develop preconceived notions and just believe in them, hear us out, listen to what we're saying, and that doesn't mean everyone will be happy. There will be people who are impacted in a way they don't want to be. We understand that. We respect that. But there's a lot of information we've prepared. Some of it we can cover tonight. We have a brief time, and I should watch my clock. Tell me if I'm taking too long. Anyway, that's a quick request. On to page 4. Just quickly, for those of you who don't know, we are in Gaston County. We're proud to call Gaston County home. We're an American company. We used to be Australian. We were founded by an Australian entrepreneurial group, very smart people. They wanted to bring lithium back to North Carolina. They thought that was the best place in the world to do it. We've redomiciled. We're an American company. We're headquartered in Belmont. We have 24 employees, all Americans, many locals. And most of them are engineers, geologists, technical people with really extensive experience developing projects like this. We have by far the best team of people to develop a project like this of any development stage company in the industry. We're already very active in the community with Chambers of Commerce, Gaston County Schools, Youth Sports, the Shield Museum, Price's Arena, Carolina Thread Trail, et cetera, many more. We are publicly listed on NASDAQ. I don't think there are a lot of publicly listed companies based in Gaston County for what it's worth, but we do have ongoing reporting obligations, and that's something I think people see us every now and then talking in the public domain. They wonder why. We have to. It's a requirement of being in business. And our plan is to develop America's largest lithium business here in North Carolina. The picture here just is an engineer's image or architect's image of what our new office is going to look like in Belmont, right around the corner from our current office at 32 North Main. This is something we're under lease. We hope to move in toward the end of the year, unless the landlord is late in developing. Page 5, just briefly, we're not just here in North Carolina, so just so you know, you might have read about this. We've been busy. There's been a lot going on. I mean, in the last 2 months, in the last month actually, we've made investments in Canada and in Africa. But fundamentally, the Carolina Lithium Project is, we think, the best asset in the world. It's not the best ore body necessarily. There are some ore bodies in Australia and the Congo that are bigger, higher grade, but it's by far the best located asset in the world. We believe we can be the lowest cost producer in the world right here in Gaston County. We're very excited about it, but we want to get bigger, and there are other spodumene resources around the world. So there's only so much spodumene here in North Carolina. We have 39 million tons. There's a lot more elsewhere. We're interested in potentially over time, and this is for future conversation, at some point we're going to run out of mineral, but we're going to have chemical plants built that are going to be world class. You might know there's a big chemical plant in Bessemer City. It's run by a company called Livent, used to be Lithium Corp of America. They mined for 43 years in Bessemer City. They now import lithium carbonate from Argentina, and they refine it here. That's what they do now. They wouldn't be here had they not had a mineral resource initially. So we see ourselves over time bringing additional mineral resources into this region and converting them on the site we have now. We won't need a bigger site. We won't be any more mining operation, but we think that's very exciting. So we made investments there, and we think that's, there's future growth there that we think is interesting. Sorry, on to page 6. Fundamentally, part of our core mission, our goals. First, we're very committed to the health and safety of our employees and the community. Anybody in our business is very focused on health and safety. We have safety moments whenever we get together. I used to think they were quite corny. I've decided they're actually really important, and it's an important theme for us. We aim to create the most sustainable and technically advanced lithium hydroxide business in the world. We have the big advantage of starting in 2021, not 2019 or some earlier time. So technology improves, we're capitalizing on that. We believe we can benefit the local economy by creating jobs and contributing to the prosperity of the community broadly. And we want to be an environmental steward for the community. We take that very, very seriously. We'll implement sustainable practices to ensure clean water, air, and land. We'll talk more about that later when Patrick gets up. I'm going to digress for a minute to talk about why we're in this business at all, because not everybody understands, and not everyone kind of appreciates, gee, what do you need lithium for, really? And regardless of one's view on what's going on with electric vehicles, there is a major transition going on. So every car company in the world is fully committed to electrification. It's happening. So just some quotes on the left. Well, first of all, the picture on the right, that's the Ford F-150 Lightning. That's a fully electric vehicle that will come in 2022. Patrick Brindle has the first order coming, but anyone who drives a Ford F-150 might want to look at that vehicle. These trucks will have more torque, higher towing capacity. They're going to be great trucks. I think everyone will buy one eventually. Ford's investing $29 billion in electric vehicles in the next 5 years. GM wants to be all electric by 2035. Every vehicle GM sells in 2035 will be electric. That's their goal. Ram electric pickup is coming. Daimler, obviously, Freightliners in the county. Daimler's unveiled an electric Freightliner. They're beginning to make them in Oregon. I hope they make them here at some point. So everyone's in. It's global. It's the Koreans, the Japanese, the Germans, et cetera. And if you, sorry, I flip to the next page. I'm now on page 8. There's just some fun facts about lithium I like to talk about that not everybody would have, not everyone's as bored as I am at night looking at Twitter, following news in the electric vehicle space. But the chart on the left is from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. It's a projection of electric vehicle penetration. This means what percentage of the cars sold in each of these years is expected to be electric. This is a global number. So in Norway, the number today is 70%. Norway is a small country. In Europe, generally, it's 15 to 20%. Here in the U.S., it's 3 or 4 or 5% still, but it's growing very rapidly. And as companies bring in new cars, EV penetration will grow. You can't have an electric car without a battery. You can't have a battery without lithium. There are other materials in the battery. You can use more or less cobalt or nickel or manganese or iron. You have to use lithium. There are no alternatives. And the chart in the middle is from Benchmark Mineral Intelligence. They're one of the industry's leading consultants based in London. The blue bars are their projection over the next 20 years of what supply is possible to come forward in this industry. And the light blue line above it, I hope you can see that, that's their expectation of demand. And that demand, their demand is actually far more conservative than the other chart would imply. The difference is a massive shortfall in lithium. It's sort of a reality in the industry. And it's good for us, and the world's going to need a lot more lithium, and America's going to need a lot more lithium. And on the right-hand side, you see 2 pie charts. The top one says, where does the hydroxide come from today? 83% of the world's lithium hydroxide is produced in China. The raw materials generally in Australia today, some in Chile and Argentina, but it's produced in China. The entire rest of the world produces 17%. The Chinese are spending billions to get bigger and bigger. They're not content. And they're just very aggressive. So, that's a theme we're focused on. The bottom right is interesting. I read some commentary about, gee, why do we need to develop this asset? Aren't there other ways people can produce lithium? So all the lithium hydroxide in the world today comes from either spodumene, which we'll produce, or brine. Brine is salty water in the Atacama Desert in Chile and Argentina. You pump it to surface, you evaporate the water, you're left with lithium salt. They collect and refine into lithium carbonate. That represents 100% of production today and historically. And there's some other sources. We mentioned DLE, direct lithium extraction, geothermal brines, clay. There's a bunch of other projects out there that are really interesting. In the history of time, there's never been a ton of lithium, battery-grade lithium, ever produced from any of those things. They may happen. The world's going to need a lot of lithium. I know car companies are all cheering for them, and we hope they're successful as well. But if major car companies have told us if they want to scale electric vehicle production, they're going to need spodumene as a mineral base. Page 9, this is kind of a fun page. I was cautioned about whether I should use it or not. I decided to use it. There's very much clear bipartisan support for critical mineral production in the United States. So I'm actually going to read these quotes, the first from President Biden. The bottom line is simple. The American people should never face shortages in the goods and services they rely on. We plan to expand sustainable, responsible critical minerals production and processing in the United States. The next comments are from President Trump. And Trump was the first to really lead this charge. He was a huge champion for bringing critical materials mining back to this country. The United States must broadly enhance its mining and processing capacity to guard against the possibility of supply chain disruptions and future attempts by our adversaries or strategic competitors to harm our economy and military readiness. We will put our miners back to work. Now I'm just going to shift a little bit to talk about Gaston County and kind of why we're here. So we really want to position Gaston County at the center of the electric vehicle universe, or in America at least. And we think we could be a magnet for other businesses. Again, the lithium hydroxide we produce is the hardest, within the entire supply chain, it's the hardest thing to store or transport. It's a monohydrate like salt. If you expose it to humidity, it gets clumpy. It's a bad thing. So shipping it around the world is not great. The best place to build cathode and battery plants is in the back door of a lithium hydroxide plant. Being in North Carolina, surrounded by car companies, you see this map on the left. There's lots and lots of car companies and battery companies and everyone else developing here in this region, and more will come here. And I will say, if in fact electric vehicle penetration grows like that, there could be dislocation in the traditional internal combustion business, and in terms of, parts suppliers, automotive service, et cetera. And Gaston County can really be insulated from that by building an electric vehicle kind of mindset around here, or business around here. For those who have looked at our presentations, page 11 the map might look familiar. So the green belt here is called the Carolina Tin Spodumene Belt. It's one of the 3 largest spodumene belts in the world. The other big ones are in Australia and the Congo in Africa. All of the world's lithium, essentially, was produced on this belt from the 1950s to the 1980s, and then some other projects started up in Australia and Chile. And the last mining was finished in 1998 or 9 by Lithium Corp of America. And this is well before electric vehicles, so there wasn't the need to keep going at the time. But it's a very prolific mineral belt. It's exceptionally well located given the infrastructure in the region. You guys all know the talent in the region is second to none. There's more lithium processing talent in Gaston County, English speaking, than anywhere else in the world. China has the most lithium processing talent today, but you think what Livent does in Bessemer City, what Albemarle does in Kings Mountain, there's a lot of lithium processing talent. It's been here for 70 years. It's a great advantage for us. We have people on our team who represent that. All the activity that happened back in the day was successful kind of commercially, but everything that was done back then is going to be done better today. The mining will be done better, the processing will be done better, the pollution control, environmental controls are all better. A, because it's the right thing to do, B, because we have to do it, and regulators will insist on it. The last point of this page is interesting. You may not know, there are 11 active quarry sites, very large quarry sites, greater than 100 acres within 30 miles of our proposed site. When you fly into Charlotte and you look out the window, you can't help but see lots of quarries. Anywhere you have a fast-growing urban area like Charlotte, you need aggregate, you need rock to build roads, to build shopping malls. You just can't do it without it. There are quarries all over the place, and it's important. So, and our mining operation is really going to be a lot like that. It's going to be a mineral quarry. There's no acid leaching. There's none of the stuff you might associate with, say, the gold industry or copper industry. None of that will be happening. Last page I'm going to touch is page 12, and I'll turn it over to Patrick. And this is this is the design on page 12 of our integrated site. And again, this didn't exist in March. It didn't exist a year or 2 or 3 ago. This is new, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But on this site, we're going to have mineral operations, concentrate operations, and chemical operations. And the chemical operations take up probably 5% of the land mass, and we could put more capacity there as we import material from other parts of the world. There's a big opportunity there. That's the least invasive part of our business. It's actually the highest value added. That's the part where we just assembled that land package on the CSX rail and kind of brought that as part of this June scoping study. So on the bottom of the page, just for fun, in 2018, when I joined the company in 2017, Patrick joined in 2018, January. Our initial plan was, let's just have a quarry, produce spodumene concentrate, put it on a ship to China like everybody else. And that was our plan, and it was a viable business plan. And ultimately, we kind of came to the realization that we had all this talent here in the Charlotte area, in the Gaston County area. The economics of operating here are great. We're surrounded by car companies. Why don't we do it here? So in 2019, we introduced the idea of producing lithium hydroxide right here in North Carolina. We found a site in Cleveland County, in Kings Mountain. We looked really hard to find that site. We looked all over Gaston County. We needed at least 60 acres. We needed to be on rail. We needed natural gas. The only site we found that we could get was this site in Kings Mountain. It's great. We own that site today. And we plan to move very forward on that plan. And in the interim, COVID happened. We had a bear market in lithium for 2 years, which slowed our project down and everyone else's projects down in the industry. And we took the time to kind of reevaluate and develop things, and we worked really hard ourselves to assemble a land package where we could bring the chemical plant here to Gaston County, which we think is better for you guys, and I think it's better for us. So now, as of June 2021, we have an integrated spodumene and lithium hydroxide site all in Gaston County, only one of its kind in the world. We think it's the world's most strategic asset. We think it'll be a low-cost asset and a great citizen of the county. So I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Brindle. We do want to spend time, just making sure people understand how much we've thought about a lot of the issues you should be asking about. And again, we respect every question. We're here tonight. We're happy to answer questions from anybody at the appropriate point. I'll turn it over to Patrick.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith. Mr. Chairman, esteemed commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, appreciate the time. It's good to see so many faces that I've had a chance to meet in the past, and many who are new and who are very interested in our project. Shifting over to some of the regulatory environmental considerations associated with establishing a project of the scope of Piedmont's Carolina Lithium. I'll touch on this one quickly. We had third-party Minviro conduct a life cycle analysis of our project, comparing our operations here in North Carolina with prospective or operations in the Australia to China lithium manufacturing route or lithium manufacturing routes Chile to China today. And what we found, we were very pleased with the results, is from a carbon intensity, water intensity, and land efficiency, the project here in Gaston County is among one of the most efficient in the world. We really started this journey at the end of 2017. I joined in January of 2018, and over the course of the last 4+ years, we've had extensive engagement with many federal, state, and local agencies. As Keith mentioned, the permitting and approval process in the United States is exceptionally rigorous. We have conducted extensive background studies. We partnered with HDR Engineering out of Charlotte, North Carolina. They also provide engineering services to Gaston County. We have an excellent team of regional consultants that have supported us. We've worked with federal agencies, the Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife, the EPA at the state level, NCDEQ, Daimler, the Department of Transportation, Wildlife Resources Commission, et cetera. Background studies have included elements such as threatened and endangered species surveys, cultural resources surveys, together with the State Historical Preservation Office, groundwater and surface water monitoring over multiple seasons, record keeping and reporting, characterization of the products that we will produce and the residues that our process leaves behind, and mitigation plans for streams and wetlands, together with the Division of Water Resources under a water quality certification that we received from the state in 2019. Flipping ahead, we understand one of the fundamental questions from a regulatory perspective, from the community's perspective, and from our perspective as responsible developers is, what is Piedmont Lithium doing to conserve or protect precious water resources in the region? I would like to say first and foremost that there are a number of permits, and I'll read them here, that govern how we interact with water resources in the state. Those include a Section 404 standard individual permit issued by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers under the Clean Water Act. We received that permit in November of 2019. A 401 water quality certification issued by NCDEQ's Division of Water Resources. We received that approval in November of 2019. In the future, we will have a North Carolina state mining permit that governs aspects of our interaction with water resources. We will have a no exposure certification for industrial stormwater for our lithium hydroxide operations issued by NCDEQ, and we are working on that application now. We will have a watershed protection permit, which we need to apply for with Gaston County. And we will have, and I'll touch on this in the bullets, to be very clear, our processing operations, whether that's mineral concentrates or lithium chemicals, we will not have a wastewater discharge from those operations to public waters, not to groundwater, not to Beaver Dam Creek, not to Little Beaver Dam Creek, or another stream or creek in the region. Our operations will have industrial wastewater pretreatment on our site to make effluent, which is of a standard that a wastewater treatment facility can receive. And then we will apply for a sewer permit to connect to wastewater treatment facilities in the region that can receive our effluent, process it, and discharge it along with other wastewater streams in the region. We take water resources very, very seriously. In addition to the philosophy of zero wastewater discharge, we have conducted extensive groundwater monitoring and hydrogeological modeling that will form part of our state mining permit application in the near future. We took the decision and a commitment very early in the development of our project that we would not use 20th century thinking in how we manage tailings and residue from our operations. So there is no tailings slurry, there's no impoundment, there will be no tailings dam, there will be no lagoon as part of our development plans. And we have, over the past several months, started working with Gaston County and engineering consultants that work for the county on the possibility of extending county water services into the area of our operations, and we're excited to continue that dialogue. Other concerns of folks in the area, I've had a lot of one-on-one engagement, had the opportunity to receive feedback from folks. Traffic. The biggest investment that we are making to mitigate impacts associated with traffic and with trucking is the investment in a conveyor system that will take ore from our pits and deliver it to our concentrator, and then take our concentrate and deliver it to our chemical plant. First and foremost, that will nearly eliminate or greatly reduce the number of mining trucks that we will have on our property. Mining trucks are noisy. They're dusty. They run on diesel fuel, which is carbon intensive, so we're very excited to eliminate them from our operations. Conveying material between different parts of our property also reduces the number of on-road trucks that we'll have. Our connection to the CSX rail line maximizes the amount of raw materials that we're able to bring in by rail, further reducing the number of trucks that will be on the road. That is to say that we are in a secondary road portion of the county. We do plan to have many hundreds of employees. There will be requirements for driveway permits, turning lanes, acceleration lanes. Shift change will have to be thoughtful, and we look forward to working with DOT and other parties to finalize those plans. Air quality. So again, the investment in the conveyor operations is one of the largest investments that we will make to reduce dust on our operations. Our products, whether they're the interim products from our mineral operations or our final products from our chemical operations, will be stored indoors. We don't intend to have open stockpiles on our site that can generate wind-blown dust. We plan to crush our ore inside of the pit, again, to keep that operation below the surface level and, reduce the opportunity for wind-blown dust generation. Our proposed site in Kings Mountain, which we've since shifted, does have an EPA Title V synthetic miner permit. Minor meaning it's a modest amount of emissions with respect to those things that the EPA regulates. If you think about our planned chemical operations, which we propose to produce 30,000 tons of lithium hydroxide per year, In the lithium industry globally, that will be a very, very important operation. In consideration of large-scale industrial chemical plants, it's actually quite small. The shift in technology from the acid roasting process that Keith mentioned, which was used historically in the region and continues to be very popular in China today, we've abandoned that technology route in favor of one which has fewer emissions, uses milder reagents, we think is safer, and ultimately is more cost competitive. Noise. In addition to water resources, the most common concern that we hear from residents is, what will be the effects of blasting? What I would say is that blasting is highly regulated by the state today. Details of our blasting plans have to be included in our North Carolina state mine permit application. The state regulates the intensity of vibration and air pressure that is the result of blasting at the boundary of our property, and that threshold is a fraction of the value which might cause damage to neighboring property. In order to demonstrate to the state that we're in compliance with those requirements, we have to place seismographs on structures which are adjacent to our project but off of our property, and we have to provide that data to the state to demonstrate to them that we maintain well below the regulatory requirements. What happens at the end of mine life? What is the legacy that our operations are left with? Our strategy is to progressively reclaim our site, meaning that as we progress through pit operations, we don't plan to leave a sequence of empty pits in a long line. We will reclaim them as we go. Our overburden and waste rock stockpiles, as they advance, must be progressively reclaimed. When we are finished in areas of our operations, we'll remove the roads, take down the structures which are no longer in service, remove their foundations, replace topsoil, and plant native plants in accordance with the state requirements, principally as pollen promoters. And we have to bond that work with the state at the time that we receive our mine permit application to give assurance to the state that we will fulfill our reclamation requirements. These are things that we're responsible for. They are things that we will pay for as we go. And then the bigger question is, so what happens when it's all done and Piedmont has successfully reclaimed the site, and now we have several thousands of acres, and frankly that several thousands of acres, a generation or two generations from now, has fantastic potential. The sky is the limit in terms of what that might be. Beyond our reclamation obligations, we're really very excited about having a dialogue of what can we do with that property. Can it be parks? Can it be green space? Can it be redeployed as industrial or commercial development property because it's been used in the past? We'll have a lot of electrical infrastructure making new manufacturing possible. Is it renewable energy installation, or is it any combination of those? And we're very excited about engaging with folks on long-term possibilities. Just a couple of closing touch points. We have been working very, very closely with property owners in the area over the last 5 years. We have 140 landowner agreements today that are either still in progress or we've transacted on. We've deployed about $27 million to date that have been payments to landowners or to surveyors or for closing costs, et cetera. I meet with a lot of landowners. We treat landowners with respect. We do our best to answer their questions. The agreements that we enter into with landowners give Piedmont very limited rights. To be very clear, we don't ask people to grant us mining rights until We've purchased their property, we've received our state mining permits, we've received local approvals to move forward with our operations. We're very approachable. I think folks know that we have a field office on Dallas-Cherryville Highway. We have the office in Belmont. Our contact details are here. My contact details are kind of well dispersed throughout the area. In recent times, we've gotten a lot more interest in the project, and we're happy to answer folks' questions as they come. We would ask folks a little bit of patience as we kind of work through that Q&A. And just to wrap up, again, what we think we deliver for Gaston County is substantial capital investment. It's numerous jobs that are multi-generational. It's the opportunity to bring high-tech manufacturing to the region. It's an increase in tax base. It's partnership on public-private utility projects and training, career paths, and the opportunity for high-paying jobs for local staff. And again, a lot of that will be kind of put forward in the fall. Dr. Connaughton of UNC Charlotte will publish his study. And I think that is the conclusion of our remarks. Really, thank you very much for the opportunity to come here this evening. We're in the area. We look forward to the opportunity to get together again in the future. We're very excited and proud of the work that we've done. We're excited about the opportunity to bring our business here.
Thank you very much. I think it was a very informative presentation, and I hope that you're going to stick around a little bit. As Mr. Skeeve, our planning director, alluded to at the beginning, this is basically just a first informative meeting for us, and we will have subsequent meetings where we'll have a much more exchange between the board and the company. But it brings us to citizen recognition. Afterwards, we will have a little opportunity. We can have some dialogue after we hear what the citizens have to say right now. So that's why I asked you to make sure you stick around, which I'm sure you plan to. Portion of the board's agenda is set aside for the purpose of allowing citizens an opportunity to offer comments and suggestions. This comment period is not intended to require the commission or staff to answer questions or provide a response. Questions requiring a response shall be answered as soon as possible through the county manager's office. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. And again, please be respectful of one another's times at the podium. When that light goes off after 3 minutes, I hate hitting this thing, so please, know it's time to stop when that light goes off. I will call up several speakers at one time. If you would line up over there, the drapes in front of the windows. If you would come up, state your name and address for the record, and then we'll start with Linda Bennett, Libby Carpenter, Hugh Carpenter, and Warren Snowden. No stage fright allowed.
You want us in the order which you call us?
Linda,
Okay.
name and address,
Well, I
and
guess I am
we'll
first.
start the clock.
Linda Bennett. I live on Adderholt Road, 925 Adderholt Road. According to the first map I saw, there are several more pits than are listed on the map that we were given in this book. I live on the property that is adjacent to the north pit from the other map. I use lithium batteries, and I get the fact that we do need lithium produced here in the U.S. My big concern is the quality of the environment around the mine. You have addressed us speaking to the water quality and the air quality. But I know that these levels, even when they are within the guidelines, they don't always prevent issues. We've seen that with the Gaston County landfill. My family has a farm that is right next to the Gaston County landfill. It has affected their water quality. It has affected the plants on their property. The property on Adderholt Road has been in my family for 200 years. You know, I am part of the Adderholt family. My main concern here is my water system. I know they said we could possibly get county water. I don't want county water. I have the best well water I've ever tasted, bar none. We have a lot of wildlife in the area that has finally come back. We have deer, we've got wild turkeys, we've got plants in our area that aren't seen in a lot of places in western North Carolina. We have put 49 acres of our land into the Catawba Land Conservancy. They come out every year, and they have told me that my water on my property and my plants are pristine and rare in this area. I'm concerned with what's going to happen to that. We have worked very hard to keep chemicals off our property. We've worked very hard to become very bee-friendly and very bird-friendly. We've established habitats out there. What's going to happen to that? That's my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Carpenter, welcome again.
Thank you. Libby Carpenter, 426 Adderholt Road. Chairman Keeger and Commissioners, thank you for your time. At 80 years of old, I am in a season of my life when I find myself thinking about how I want to be remembered by my children and grandchildren. In fact, every month I write a letter to my grandchildren, a story that they can pass on about our family, stories that I hope they'll one day treasure. And I do this because I want them to know about our family and its heritage and its traditions and God's blessings to us and cherished memories. This is a part of the legacy that I want to leave them. So tonight, County Commissioners, I invite you as County Commissioners and community leaders to think about the legacy you will leave behind as well, especially as you consider the future of northwestern Gaston County and the drastic changes that Piedmont Lithium proposes to make to it. Because the decisions you make about this project in the days and weeks and months ahead could well affect the way that you will be remembered. Right now, northwestern Gaston County has some of the most beautiful, as Linda said, landscapes in the area, with its many forests and fields and so much farmland, streams, rivers, and all manner of wildlife. Open pit mining will forever alter that landscape. Instead, there will be trucks and traffic and dust and noise and sediment pollution in our streams and rivers. When Piedmont Lithium first came to the area, they came to our house and asked if they could make pictures of the foundations of our home inside and out. Really, that's the only contact we've had with you. And the camera broke, and I better watch the clock. Camera broke, and they never came back to finish. But anyway, that was for a baseline of damage that they may cause. But good neighbors don't move into an area already knowing they're likely to cause damage. Just like good county commissioners don't let strangers intrude into a community knowing they're going to bring destruction, not when they can do something to prevent it. That's not the kind of legacy good county commissioners want to leave behind. They don't want to leave behind vacant homes and abandoned properties, muddy water and dusty air, and a cavernous pit that looks more like it belongs on the side of the moon than on a Gaston County landscape. So tonight, my request to you, good commissioners you are, is to think about your legacy. Think about how you want to be remembered. And be cautious, because the few gains Piedmont Lithium is promising will not be worth the cost to our county's quality of life or the cost to your legacy. Thank you, and I've got 3 seconds. I ran over last time.
Mr. Carpenter?
Chairman Keeger, and Commissioners. I've lived in northwest Gaston County for 82 years. My family grew up on my grandparents' 50-acre farm. We raised our food, vegetables, beef, and pork, and grains and fruit. My wife, Libby, and I lived on the land where we reared our children. The land is still beautiful with clean water, springs, and lush foliage. We are located right on the rim proposed by the lithium mine. We are concerned about our well water, the vibrations from blasting, the truck traffic, and noise created from mining. What will happen to our wildlife and fields and streams? Plus, we love the quiet beauty and we do not want to sell or relocate. Piedmont Lithium's proposal creates an unending burden on Gaston County. Not only will groundwater be contaminated forever, the risk of surface water contamination requires containment structures to last for thousands of years. A failure of any structure will result in catastrophe for thousands of miles of waterways in North Carolina and South Carolina. Do we want lifeless rivers, our families, friends, and neighbors drinking water that's poisoned? Many open pit mines become toxic Superfund sites after they close. These toxic sites become a burden to the communities around them, discouraging investments into these areas, harming the health of people and wildlife. And I ask you commissioners please to vote for no for rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. After you're through speaking, you feel free to leave or return to your seats, please. Before Mr. Snowden starts, I'd call up Locke Bell, Jessica Lenholt, Christina Goldstein, Frank Moxham, and Anne Marie Gerhardt. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Warren Snowden, 611 Adderholt Road. Thank you, commissioners and staff, for the opportunity to speak in front of you. I know that many of you, we've spoken many times about this topic, and I do appreciate you all coming in to give facts and give clear definition this evening. But I do still have a lot of questions. As we are a fourth-generation family farm that finds ourselves on the other side of the property line, about 2,800 feet of our property line will adjoin the east pit. So you can imagine we do have a lot of concern, and we're in the uncomfortable position that there's a lot of unknowns. You know, this is family land. There have been many awards given for our property for conservation efforts. We have looked to enroll our property into offsetting carbon credits. We're a certified tree farm, and we have children who have ambitions of being a part of this land and being in this location for the next generation. So as I thought about what I wanted to say tonight, you know, I think that so much, we've talked about so many things. We've talked about the air, the dust, the water, and you'll hear plenty more concerns about that for sure. But ultimately, you know, I think Keith said it really well. The U.S. needs processing capabilities. I don't think anybody here necessarily is suggesting that another resource is necessary, meaning an open hard pit mine. You've got competitors in this region that have shuttered their mines, and they've heavily invested into direct lithium extraction around the globe. So I challenge this board to really think about the impacts of a large-scale mining operation in Gaston County. And to put this into perspective, many folks are familiar with Charlotte and the uptown area of Charlotte inside the 277 Belt Loop. That's about 1,200 acres that makes up what we call uptown Charlotte. 120,000 employees and 53 million square feet of offices is about 1,200 acres. What's before us and the impact that we need to understand is this is twice to 3 times that size. So I stand before you this evening really asking that we do take the time, that we do explore the questions, that we do understand the technology that they are asking for. But at the end of the day, it's still a ginormous 500-foot deep east pit and other pits associated with it. So we do have great concerns, and we look forward to hearing more as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bell, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, my name's Locke Bell. I live at 534 Whitesides Road, which is smack dab in the middle of all this. I have not taken a position for or against, although I'm not selling to anyone. I'm coming tonight on a very serious concern that I have about some of the transfers of land and the methods that Piedmont Lithium seems to have used. And I went and attempted to discuss this with some people up at their business and was not able to have anybody listen. Back in July, I think around July 7th, Piedmont Lithium bought some land from a lady. Straight transaction. She's a good woman. She sold. She made a tremendous profit. That deed was recorded. They also, it appears from the recorded deeds, got her to sign another deed to which was attached 222 acres of other people's land. It was recorded. I will. These are for y'all. Same day, a very good family. I know these people, good people. They sold their land, made a very good profit. I have not fought anybody making a profit. That deed was recorded. They signed another deed, and I guarantee you they did not know what, was going to happen. Other land was attached to that deed, belonging to other people. Those deeds were recorded at the Gaston County Register of Deeds. And I attempted to discuss this with Chief Geologist, got nowhere. I would give these, Mr. Chairman, okay.
Mr. Chairman, there was a motion to accept.
Not during work session.
And that is what I have to present. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica?
Good evening. My name is Jessica Linhart. I live at 129 George Pacer Road in Krause. I have lived in Gaston County for my entire 32 years of life, and almost half of that at my current address. This is my home. It's everything that my husband and I have worked for and we've built, and where we've chosen to raise our children just as many generations before us have. My husband and I strive to keep tradition. We respect family history, and we take pride in caring for what we've worked so hard to have in life. We've chosen to raise our children here, teaching them the values that we hold dearly and where they are free to run and play without worrying about being in a city. Piedmont Lithium does threaten all of that. What of the families in this area that may be displaced? These are good, hardworking people that have worked their entire lives for everything that they have, just to have it yanked away in the name of progress. Please enlighten me as to how this is a clean energy source when substantially more resources will be needed for all of these people to uproot their lives and to start over. And we get an ugly giant hole in the ground as consolation. How much bond is Piedmont Lithium willing to post to ensure that the area is returned to the standards of quality it is now? And why is the map listed on their website from June 9th in the company presentation so significantly different than the map that was handed out here today? Is what they're showing their investors different from what they are showing us? They are willing to destroy people's lives, homes, and one of the most beautiful, peaceful areas in Gaston County for rechargeable batteries. I want to be able to walk outside and hear the birds and the crickets, not the roar of machinery destroying the place that I love and call home. I am asking you from the bottom of my heart to consider the quality of life here, the wildlife, the agriculture, the natural water sources, but most of all, consider the people here. They aren't just nameless faces. They are family, friends, and generations that have called this area home for well over 100 years. Rural Gaston County certainly deserves far better than an ugly hole in the ground made by a company that seeks financial gain ahead of people that are there facing this by no choice of their own. And I, for one, refuse to give value to a corporation who puts profit ahead of those people. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Christina? Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I live at 552 C.A. Clark Trail in Bessemer City. I guess I didn't quite understand what the meeting is about. I'm not necessarily against Piedmont Lithium. I've always thought lithium and the new battery and the situation was really good. When I bought the house in 2016, we had no idea about lithium. This was just found this great place, this great area to live. We love the southern people. We love the life we live here. By 2017, though, we were hearing about lithium. There were some concerns, and I heard them voiced at a previous meeting. I think what most of the people want to know or get from lithium, like anybody else, is, just as the lady had spoken of, the posting bond. But the posting bond or the securing of some kind of backup or group that will come and, service people during the time of the mining is something I think that needs to be looked into, because people, if they lose their water tables because of the mining, I heard last time was not resolved. Now, it's secondhand information, and I wasn't here at the time, but I had heard talk like anybody else does when you hear something like this coming into the neighborhood, being honest. So my concern tonight was, I do believe, just like people didn't want the railroads coming through their properties, I'm sure back in the day, and all kinds of other times where we had to modernize and move with the latest trends, it is very painful and very hard on those families. But because as this country, and being down south where they're Bible beaters, a higher authority says, love him first with all your heart and soul, and then your neighbor in the same breath. We want to make sure that no matter what kind of construction, whether it's lithium or other things are being done, that, as we say in New York, if all the palms are getting greased and there's money to be made, it's going to be significant on all ends, that money is put aside in some kind of funding or something that's only available to people that get affected because of this. I don't want it to go into every other thing or being used for, other groups not involved. And at the end of the mining, whatever portion is left of that be given as some kind of bonus to those people that still had to survive and had the most greatest impact by lithium. So that although I don't think I can see a perfect situation or connection to how things will go, I do think they can post a bond or do something that will at least ensure people that it's not going to come out of their pocket, and I think that's primary. People don't want to get a slap in the face and then told they have to be pay for it. So any water damage, any lack of water, any situations like that have to be paid out of a fund, and I would like some kind of bond or some kind of security that people know they're not going to lose everything, and on top of it all have to pay to try to survive or give up a structure, and that wouldn't be fair, and I don't think God would think that's right either. So yes, let's do business, but let's be fair to those who will be in the brunt of the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moxham, but I'll also at this time call to line up Pat Martin, Todd Bloom, John Hinkle, and Rebecca Buck. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Commissioner Keeger, Board of Commissioners. My name is Frank Moxham. I live in Gastonia. I want to give special thanks and credit to particularly David Martin, who's been especially active in distributing information, doing significant research on this topic for some time now. So thank you, David. I want to say first that there is no such thing as a clean mine. No matter what the mining company promises or what laws the state has in place, there will always be problems during and after any mining operation. Our main concern is for our community. And our concern for our community is after the operation, especially after the mine shuts down and the mining company moves on to other sites. Who is left with the problems? Who pays the price? Our people, our environment, our county government, and the federal government ultimately, if the site would be declared a Superfund site like our neighbors in Clover, South Carolina. They've experienced at Henry's Knob. The Henry's Knob mine in Clover, South Carolina became a toxic super for decades to come. Part of Piedmont Lithium's proposed mine is on Beaver Dam Creek. The mine is an immense threat to the creek's water quality. Beaver Dam Creek eventually flows into the South Fork of the Catawba River. And from this river, towns like Dallas get their drinking water. Gastonia uses the South Fork as a backup source for its water. Is the mine worth the risk to the health and safety of thousands of citizens of Gaston County? On February 19th, 2019, a report by the Associated Press reviewed various mining sites around the United States. The Associated Press found that every day, millions of gallons of water loaded with arsenic, lead, and other toxic metals flow from some of the most contaminated mining sites in the United States into the surrounding streams and ponds without and before being treated. Using data from public records, independent researchers have found that they examined 43 mining sites.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gerhart? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Anne Marie Gerhart of 31 Windy Hill Circle. I am very unaccustomed to public speaking and even less accustomed to the rules of order, so you'll pardon me. I will be brief. Mainly, I have been out west and I have seen some of the toxic pit mines that have been left behind there. Mines that are so toxic that no life can exist around them. I have spoken with friends in other states who live near similar mines. None of my friends have ever seen a mine that was actually ever cleaned up very well, enough that anyone would ever want to be around them. I appreciated everything that was offered by Piedmont Lithium as to what they propose and what they plan to do, but plans don't always work out sometimes. Plans sometimes start off with the best of intentions and end up with the taxpayers having to bear the brunt of all the issues. So I wish to come before you today just to express my deep concern and my resignation over this whole project. And I hope you'll take it into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Pat Martin? Good evening.
Good evening. Chairman Kiger and commissioners, and also representatives from Piedmont Lithium. I live at 3120 Weston Avenue, which is in South Gastonia and not really close to this site. However, 2 weeks ago, I paid my house off. I am not a long-term person in this area, but I paid my house off. During that time, I am a degreed engineer. I have worked in York, South Carolina. I've worked in Cleveland County. I've worked in Rowan County. I've worked in Catawba County. I don't think I've ever worked in Gaston County. I really don't. On my way here, I drove past not one, not two, but 3 empty sites where there used to be mills. Where's the economy? We're sitting on a gold mine. Literally, quite literally, we're sitting on good dirt. In my opinion, from what I've heard tonight, I saw on Facebook that there was going to be this presentation explaining the scope of the project. I also saw on Facebook several postings saying, come on up here, we got to protest this thing. And I was a little puzzled as to why we're going to protest something when we don't know how big, how wide, how deep it is. We don't know. In my opinion, I just wanted to thank the gentleman from Piedmont Lithium for putting such a thorough and professional explanation of the project together. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Todd? Welcome.
Thank you. Let's not kid ourselves. Lithium, especially in a purified form, is dangerous. It likes to burn. If we do decide to go ahead with the mine, we need to think about what happens if it goes wrong. We need to think about supporting our first responders and paramedics that are going to have to respond to the site. Just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hinkle? John Hinkle?
Oh, I was John Hinkle, I'm sorry.
Okay, was there a Todd Bloom.
I'm here.
Okay.
My comments were repetitive, so I was going to spare you the time.
Thank you, sir, and have a good evening. Rebecca Buck. And I would now call up Kevin Gee, Brian Harper, Tim Hepler, Marie Robinson, Will Baldwin, Lisa Baldwin. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to have time to speak here. I hadn't come prepared but felt compelled. I am a newcomer here. I have lived at 2154 Moody Road, which whenever I pronounce it or spell it to anyone, I have to tell them Monty Road, because a family named Mooney came to this area when the first, and as I found out, they were the first white settlers. They were the first people that lived, their ancestors lived on the land I was blessed to have found here at 2154 Monty Road. I grew up for 50 years in Ohio, on the northern shores of Ohio. I came here, and lo and behold, I found an area that was Catawba. I know of Catawba Island in Lake Erie. I know of a vast history. I know of a vast history of the Civil War. I know of a vast history of Civil War prison camps that were there on Catawba Island. How ironic that after I spent 3 years looking at 200, more than 200 houses, I worked and lived in an apartment when I was used to living on a beautiful farm that my husband and I had made up in Ohio, at a family area with many families, just like I've heard here talk about their history. I'm still a newcomer up in that area of that history. I'm still a newcomer there after 37 years, but still love that place and see so much here that reminds me of the love and the families and the traditions there, the nature there. I was very involved in an organization called the Seventh Generation. We were organized in the early 80s to stop pollution. We're tree huggers. That's all right. You can call me anything you want. All I want to say is we have obligations. We have obligations to every generation that comes beyond us. We have obligations today. We had the best honey in all of this area. I didn't raise it. My boss in my high-tech job wanted to have a beehive. And he says, you've got a cute little place right along that beautiful little river shed. People around me don't even know what's back there behind that beautiful river shed. I'm downriver from where they proposed to destroy this beautiful land. A dozen turkeys were in.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Kevin? I hope I got the last name right.
You did, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening to you. Good evening, board members. My name is Kevin Gee. I live at 1715 Hesba Church Road. I am one of the 140 families affected by this. I am in agreement with Piedmont. I'm appreciative of everybody here in red. Change is abrasive. It's hard. I get it. I'm appreciative of my geological historian who talked about Charlotte, negated the fact that it was built on a gold mine. This isn't brand new for this area. We've been doing this for a long time, dating back to the 1860s in Western Carolina. I'm new to the area. I bought over 22 acres. I'm here to chase the American dream. I want to get into agriculture. My challenge and my question to my ag friends is, how many here practice permaculture? How many of you here know what symbiosis is? How many of you use fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides? I could go on for days, guys. I'm here to chase a dream. Piedmont's going to make that a reality. I have a North Carolina Board of Education lottery ticket in my pocket because I'm a dreamer, okay? I see the potential of a project like this. I'm going to embrace it. that's pretty much all I got to say. Any objection anybody has to this project, I can overcome in 5 minutes. Have a blessed, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Brian Harper? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm Brian Harper. I own property at 1953 Hepzibah Church Road, which is a 10-acre tract that me and my wife own. I also own my business adjacent to it at 2015 Hepzibah Church Road, which is Stein Gear Machine Company. What's ironic about the gentleman that preceded me talk about his dream is my dream is fixing to be taken away. We moved there in 2004 to bring our business from Gastonia to a wonderful area. And now all that is going to be gone because our business is different than most people here. We manufacture gears, sprockets, and power transmission components that make this world go around. We're a small business. I have 11 employees, including me and my wife. We've been in business now for 51 years. And with this, any at all of their blasting, which the new thing that they just gave us, I'm right there at their east pit. My machinery will not run and will not produce parts like they do now with any type of blasting. We make quality products that are to the tenths of a thousandths in tolerance. That is not going to be possible at all with this. I haven't had any of them come to look at our business. I'm sure each and every one of you have drove by it. Mine's the red building. I haven't had y'all come in there, talk to me about how it's going to affect me, my family, and my dream.
Sir, direct your comments to the chair, please.
Yes, sir. I spoke to each and every one of you, save Mr. Philbeck on the phone. And I just want you to know that what is happening here may make other people's dreams, but mine's going away. I cannot purchase another building to suffice what I do with the money I have available to do it. We had Maryland. I contacted them. They never contacted me. And he told me where he was standing would be a 500-foot pit, and there's nothing I could do about it. Now, I see on this that that pit has moved up just a little bit, but it still affects me directly. And me and my other 10 employees will be attempting to move, attempting to find other jobs. My employees are centrally located. They don't have to drive an hour to work. This is how it affects me. Plus, we built our home as a place where I planned on dying. We have a beautiful home right there at 1953 Hepzibah Church Road. I don't want to move. I don't see the people from Piedmont living right there at their mine.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hepler. Okay, good evening. Welcome.
My wife and I own a piece of property of 5.5 acres right at where St. Mark's Church Road and Dallas Cherryville Highway comes together. We've been trying to sell that property since April. With one realtor, we released him 1st of July, and we took the house off the market because we couldn't get any interest in it. This realtor put our house on the market for the value of houses being sold around the larger area, and we were not getting any interest on it until I hired this new realtor that we got now, and we're getting ready to put it back on the market, but the realtor now wants to make it even a lower price than we've already lowered it. And what I had her do is a cost sales study of houses in the area around where the mine's going to go and outside the area. And houses are selling for $30 to $50 less per square foot. This is going to be near what a lot of people are saying, near the big hole in the ground that's going to be proposed and near the chemical plant. With that being said, I'd just like to know, with the Piedmont Lithium people, are they going to live near this big hole in the ground, near this chemical plant? That's a real big question that needs to be asked to them. Also, I have a small trucking business, and I have pulled one of Levant tankers out of there. It's butyl lithium that they haul I have a hazmat certification. I don't know if you know butyl lithium, you cannot get water on it. It ignite. Because when I was unloading, I only did one load because it was so, it shook me up because of the volatility of it, because they wouldn't unload the tanker in the rain. And just want to make you aware of what, hope we're prepared for if there's some kind of disaster of that happens at the chemical plant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Marie Robinson. And at this time, I'll call up Jeff, looks like Armstrong, Bobby Tedder, Eric Carpenter, Christina Schatz. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Good to see you. And to Tom Kiger and the rest of the commissioners, I'm glad to be with you this evening. I'm Marie Robinson. I live Philadelphia Church Road in Dallas, so I know Tracy Philbeck. And I'm here in support of my friends that live on Adderholt Road. And I've been studying up a little bit about lithium mining a little bit. And what I have studied was that Piedmont Lithium presents itself as a significant future source of green lithium, but their estimated yearly production would barely account for 1% of the estimated global demand by 2030. Abundant brine found from Canada to Chile holds the key to supplying growing demand. New brine extraction technologies allow for the extraction of lithium within hours, simply by recirculating brine water through filters. That is a truly green source of lithium. Open pit mining is the way of the past and will tear up and destroy many thousands of acres. I encourage you to oppose Piedmont Lithium's exploitation of Gaston County and its residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we put this in?
It's a motion to accept.
Not during a work session, not needed. We don't vote. Will Baldwin or Lisa Baldwin, whoever wants to go first. I take it you're together.
Thank you. My name is Will Baldwin, and my address is 426 Adderholt Road. Dear Chairman Kiger and Commissioners, thank you for your time, attention, and service to this community. We have listened to Piedmont Lithium present how they will irreparably destroy thousands of acres of farmland in Gaston County. I want to first remind you that their predicted lithium production accounts for a mere fraction of estimated demand by 2030, especially since many of their potential competitors currently produce 3 or more times as much as they're saying they would produce in a year. We don't need this open pit mine. There is so much lithium in the world that this is just a minor piece, and we don't have to have it here. It's such an destructive technology, and especially since the new technology is being developed that's really revolutionizing the industry, that uses much less land and much less water. Additionally, you have a duty to commit to promote agriculture, not mines. The state has declared in general statutes that it has the express policy to promote agriculture. Every county also has this duty because each county is a creation of the General Assembly and must follow their guidelines. And this will be destroying so much of it, destroying water that farms need, and without it they can't run. And additionally, I just learned, actually, that the SEC, as well as a law firm in San Francisco, are launching investigations and lawsuits into Piedmont Lithium because for misleading investors about having permits. So can we really trust them to do a good job with this in mind? Thank you, and I hope you consider these facts as you consider their proposal.
Thank you, sir. Lisa Baldwin? We don't vote during a work session.
This is, I'm Lisa Baldwin, 426 Adderholt Road. Dear Chairman Kiger and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to share my point of view in opposition to the mine. My family's home is located on the rim of the proposed mine. 9 generations of carpenters have lived on this property since arriving in the mid-1700s. I grew up in the shadow of the Hallman Beam lithium mine a toxic Superfund site, which has been archived by the EPA. I attended the historic Tryon Elementary and Junior High School, a school that was demolished when I was in 9th grade, affected by years of blasting in the nearby lithium mine. These blasts shook the building daily, rattled the windows, and made it impossible to hear the teacher, leaving behind cracks in the foundation, walls, and ceiling. Even when I was at home, 4 miles away, I could feel the vibrations from the blasts. Fast forward to 2017. Piedmont Lithium sent people out to photograph our family's home inside and out from the basement to the top floor so they could document any existing cracks just in case their proposed mine caused any problems. Letters and phone calls to buy our property were received, making the mine sound like a done deal when it's anything but that. Piedmont Lithium has put the cart before the horse. They have not gone through the proper channels to obtain the necessary permits and rezoning for mining, and it sounds like, according to my son Will, they may be paying some consequences for misleading their investors with respect to permits. It's frightening to think that a foreign company from Australia can come in overnight, use scare tactics to drive people from their homes, pay a pittance for their property, and then bulldoze and burn those homes. This is exactly what Piedmont Lithium is doing to the residents of northwestern Gaston County. The news has not reported this. Piedmont Lithium has been operating in the dark. We are trying to shine a light on their covert operations. For 4 years, we've lived in fear that the threat of the mine will devalue our property, contaminate and dry up our well water, pollute our streams and rivers, devastate the agriculture industry, and force us to move. Please stop the economic and environmental devastation of Gaston County and the surrounding area. We are asking that you authorize a moratorium on new mining in Gaston County. This is something that you can do to stop this from ever happening again. And we also ask that you vote against the rezoning and permitting of this mine. I have a petition from Stop Piedmont Lithium, our Facebook page. We've already obtained over 1,600 signatures, and you'll find that they are 99.9% local people who've signed this petition. And I'll present this to the secretary.
Thank you, ma'am.
Motion to accept.
Mr. Armstrong. Jeff Armstrong? I believe it's Armstrong. 472 Fenton Place, Charlotte. Bobby Tedder.
County Commissioners and all here. My name's Bobby Tedder. I live on 221 Forest Dellinger Road, Bedford City, North Carolina. I'm gonna be about 3/8 of a mile from this mine and all the pits. I've done seen the devastation that this causes. I've done walked that land. Looks like a bomb area, and it's gonna get worse. I've seen the southern box turtles that have been squished. They're on endangered species. There are chubs in that creek. There's red horses, little fairy hens and things that build his nest. They're on endangered species. I also understand that Mr. Mason's well on Epsom Church Road went dry when they was drilling, but Piedmont paid for that. They stepped in and paid for it. It was a punched well. I have a punched well. Many in here have punched wells that live close. I've dealt with explosives as an infantry soldier and a combat engineer. I know that it takes the least route of existence. There's fissures in the rocks. It's gonna go that way. They will continue to get bigger. Is my well gonna go dry? Who's gonna pay for that? You can't keep paying for wells, and it will cause them to go dry. What type of heavy metals is gonna come out of this? Arsenic, lead, mercury? How's it gonna affect everything? This hydroxide plant, as they say, are you gonna process the lithium there? It is highly explosive. If you get a drop of sweat in it, bam, it blows up. Is there gonna be sodium chloride, hydroxide from this? It's explosive because.
Sir?
Done?
Address your comments
Oh,
up here.
I'm sorry. The sodium chloride and things is used in explosives, so that's gonna be used in the ground. It won't be TNT or anything like that. It's going to be a liquid explosive. They'll bring it in a truck and it's pumped in the ground. So therefore, that's gonna go in our water and our aquifers. And eventually, it's gonna leach into the creeks. If there's plume and antimony that comes off of this, it can pollute the groundwater for 300 years. And a doctor, got his name wrote down if I can find it. He says that the Lithium Americas mine, which is based in Canada, I believe, and I don't know if they're going to be, involved in this. His name is Dr. Eric Powell. He says they have grossly misassessed everything on their accuracy, according to hydrologist Dr. Eric Powell. So, as far as everything goes, I'd like to know about the heavy metals. Now, another thing I'd really like to know is, for everybody that's in here that owns property here, when y'all meet again on tax purposes, how much are you gonna drop our taxes? I already know what mine's valued at. So how much are you gonna drop our taxes? Because I'm not gonna be able to sell my property when they start blasting. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Have a good day.
Eric Carpenter, please. And I'll call the rest of the list up. It looks like Dottie Profit, Brandon Jones, Emil Nelson, and Warren Snowden.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name's Eric Carpenter. My family owns property at the corner of Adderholt and Rudisill Road. We own 5 acres. I was surprised to hear Piedmont Lithium say that they've contacted local property owners. According to the map they handed out tonight, our property will be directly across Adderholt Road from their east pit. We have not heard anything from Piedmont Lithium. They have a lot of nice things to say about controls they plan to put in place to protect the environment. One thing we didn't hear tonight is what experience has Piedmont Lithium had in actually operating a mine. We didn't hear that because they've never operated a mine, and yet they want us to take their word for it. I think I would encourage you, as a Board of Commissioners, think about your own experience, what you've seen in other parts of the country, what you're aware of. Companies come in, they make very good, interesting sounding promises of jobs and prosperity, but what they really deliver are Superfund sites and heartache. To echo one of the earlier speakers' comments, they're chasing the dream, but don't chase the dream and leave all of us with a nightmare. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Christina? Good evening.
Good evening. It's Schatz, by the way. It's a hard name. Thank you all for having us here tonight. Piedmont Lithium openly admits that a primary draw to this area is a favorable regulatory environment. If they think the environment restrictions are not very strict, then how are they going to go above and beyond them to protect us? They state they will have zero water waste discharge, but that doesn't account for breaches or water that drains due to flaws or damage. I think we all just recently heard about a giant sewage leak that happened in one of our local lakes. How are you going to feel about that when it's a chemical waste product instead of a human waste product flowing through your water? A significant amount of water flows through the area that mine would be on. This water feeds into major waterways. Any failure would wreak havoc on our neighborhoods and our local area. When it comes down to it, the best way to prevent an environmental problem is to not build the mine. A 2,000-acre crater isn't exactly eco-friendly, no matter how you spin it. People here are talking about progress and we need to move forward and all the changes that happened over the centuries, but I beg you to listen to the people who have told you they've lived here for hundreds of years. The generational distraught that will happen to these families and the history that will be lost by allowing this land to just be torn open and destroyed. People's livelihoods. My children's school is celebrating 100th anniversary. Like, I couldn't even imagine that from where I'm originally from. I want this neighborhood, I want their family to 8 generations down the line talking about how they've been here for 16 generations. I want the school to have a 200th anniversary. I want the community to stay pristine. I came here for that reason. I want to stay here for that reason. I want my children to raise their children here. And if this happens, we cannot do that. It'll be no different than anywhere else that gets destroyed by so-called moving on in progress. But sometimes we have to hold our history and hold our nature and realize that without that, we don't have anything left here. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Dottie Profit? Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners.
My name is Dottie Prophet, and I did not originally plan to speak at this meeting. Ever since we've heard about Piedmont Lithium, my husband has been terribly upset over it. We have lived at our property a little over 20 years, and I'm a senior citizen, you know. I'm settled, I don't want to move. And when you're told things like, if you don't want to give up your property, you don't want to move, we'll just mine around you. Is that being a good neighbor? No, it's not. From my understanding, Piedmont Lithium is a company of Australian origin with Australia investment bankers, okay? So I've been given some points I can read here. One is open pit mines can also discourage other forms of economic development. Many industries prefer to avoid areas near significant open pit mines. Piedmont Lithium's proposed site sits on several creeks which flow into the South Fork of the Catawba River, which eventually flows into the Catawba River. A failure of mine waste containment, and failures do happen, mistakes happen, and equipment breaks down, would contaminate waterways that are sources of water for towns like Belmont and Dallas. So we're not just talking about one little area here, we're talking about a thing that can infect many towns in Gaston County. I live right smack dab in the middle of this project they're proposing. We have red-tailed hawks at the back of our property. What are you going to do with those? They're on the endangered list. That's my question. And you know, all these nice comments that you have, we're going to do this with parks and we're going to turn this into this at the end. Can you really make them responsible to do that when this project ends? Piedmont Lithium has created a culture of fear, dishonesty, and uncertainty over the last 4 years as they have brought up land without clearly expressing their final intentions. Piedmont Lithium is far from having their way. They have yet to request rezoning and still require many important permits. Much of the information on their website is incomplete as well. They may seem like a powerful company, but they are a paper tiger. I am a citizen of Gaston County, like these other people here. More importantly, I am an American, and we have rights and we have votes. And we are about home, family, faith, and country. And this mine is threatening our very way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Brandon Jones?
Thank you, Chairman, Board, everyone here today. My name is Brandon Jones, live at 5015 Doris Avenue in Charlotte, North Carolina. However, I'm here today professionally as the Catawba River Keeper, representing the Catawba River Keeper Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that educates and advocates to protect the Catawba River and all its tributaries, including Beaver Dam Creek and Little Beaver Dam Creek. Over the last couple of weeks and months, I've had an opportunity to visit with the neighbors next door on the site. I've had the opportunity to meet with Piedmont Lithium in their office, review site plans, and they've gone over all the public documents related to the site, at least the ones I could find. Due to the direct impacts on surface waters and topographic change and indirect impacts of impervious surface, our organization does not generally support large construction projects on undeveloped land. In their federally approved permit, Piedmont Lithium is planning to infill 1,481 linear feet of perennial tributaries, about 5,000 linear feet of intermittent tributaries, and roughly 8 acres of wetlands. This permit does include mitigation for that. Unfortunately, there are no mitigation banks currently in the South Fork watershed, and so it's yet to be seen what exactly the state will do to mitigate with those credits. However, in addition to the rights of landowners, we recognize that our area's population is growing, and redevelopment may be inadequate to meet that demand for more homes, parking lots, landfills, and potentially mines. When development is deemed necessary or unavoidable, we advocate for minimal disturbed areas, localized mitigation, transparent monitoring, and the application of low-impact designs. I also recognize that this project will have impacts outside the scope of my expertise as a watershed advocate. There are other negative externalities such as dust, traffic, habitat loss, seismic activity, and noise. There are also other benefits potentially such as jobs, tax revenue, and reduced carbon emissions. If this commission does decide to permit this facility, we would ask that they do so only as a conditional use rezoning. In that case, we can have those increased environmental protections, particularly the ones that were recommended in the original federal permitting by the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. Things such as larger stream buffers, a macroinvertebrate survey, and much more protective sediment erosion control. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And last speaker is Emil Nelson. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Emily Nelson. Many of you guys may know me if you've dropped off wildlife at my house. I used to run NC Wildlife Rehab, which has been closed for a year because of this mine. So as I've been sitting here listening, I've been kind of thinking about this. So there's several different groups of people that are involved with this. So you have the people that have sold their property. So that's one group. You have another where the people are under contract. You also have like a subgroup of the chance that other people could go under contract that aren't currently under it. The last group are those left behind, and with a subgroup of those that are unaware of the mine, that don't even know it exists. That's what terrifies me. So as you go through these groups, so the people that have sold, their property's gone, they've received the money, so they're good. You have the people who are under contracts. Well, with the money that Piedmont Lithium is offering, generally they're saying it's like 1 time or 2 times or 3 times your property. We don't know that much because once the people are under contract, they can't talk about this to anybody. No matter how close you are, they can't tell you anything to help protect you. So these people that are under contract, a lot of them, because this has been going on for years, we don't know when this is actually going to take place. So what if they're going out and they're spending more money on other property or a new house? That way they're going to have a place to live if this goes through. Okay, so think about it. All right, so they're under contract. They think this is going to happen. What if it doesn't go through? Then these people are stuck with double mortgages. And where we are, because I am right there in the middle of this whole pit of shit, and that's what it is.
Ma'am?
Sorry, I apologize.
That's not in order.
But, so, I totally forgot where I was. But if because if they end up with 2 properties that they're both responsible for, they're gonna go through their savings trying to keep the both of these afloat. Well, if the lithium doesn't go through, then they're stuck with both of these, and they're gonna send people under financially. And then you have those that are left behind, the ones that have to worry about the water and the air and the land, because it's the land too. So whenever these particles fall out of the sky, we're gonna walk on them. We're gonna track them in our house. We're gonna take it in our bodies. It's gonna affect our animals. It's gonna affect our wildlife. Actually, because I released over 1,200 wild animals a year out of our basement for several years. All of those animals are probably going to die, especially if they're going to end up drinking the water that is left behind.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, we've heard an awful lot of information tonight. As Mr. Skeeb, our planning director, mentioned, that we will have subsequent meetings. Not quite sure how fast the board's going to be able to move on this. But I don't see us getting into a big discussion tonight. We're going to have to get our manager and our clerk together with the PL people and set up a schedule for probably the next meeting or 2 if needed. But I would like to have everybody on the board the opportunity to make some comments. And I guess I'll start with Mr. Fraley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions. I don't know which one of you gentlemen would like to come up and answer, but first of all, will Piedmont Lithium actually operate this mine, to the best of your knowledge?
Thank you. I will take a crack at that. A comment was made earlier that Piedmont Lithium has never built or operated a mine. That's a true statement. We're a new company founded to really develop this project. We're full of people. We have a team full of people and are building a team to build and operate projects like this. We fully do intend to build and operate it, yes.
So there's not a possibility you're just putting all the pieces together and going to eventually sell to the highest bidder?
That is not our strategy at all. It never really has been. And, you know, we're a public company, so we're widely held. There's nobody who owns more than 3% of our company, so lots of things can happen, but that's not our strategy. We did hire investment bankers, as somebody pointed out, with the idea of bringing capital into the project. $840 million is a lot of money. There are a lot of people interested in our project, chemical companies, oil companies, mining companies who bring expertise and capital. That's the purpose of that mandate. So we have no plans to sell the company.
Speaking of the $840 million, how much of that have you raised at this point? Can you disclose that, or?
Yeah, it's public information. I mean, we have a cash balance at June 30, approximately $140 million. And again, you can't raise money until you're permitted.
Right.
So you can't. So the $840 million, you can't raise that until you're done, and you can't raise it until you have customers. So we're going to need to have customers to buy all of our material before anybody will lend us money. So we've had, you know, J.P. Morgan and Evercore are leading financial institutions. They're helping. We're involved in a number of discussions with potential lenders. So I did spend 30 years as an investment banker, not in Australia, but in New York. I feel very good about our financing prospects. The lithium markets are strong, but that's money we still have to raise.
Someone mentioned about a lawsuit that you guys are currently involved in or being investigated with investment. You know, I don't know the details, but could you elaborate on that a little bit, or tell us, is that a potential that could shut you guys down and maybe make this project not even happen? If,
you know, so I got a text as I was coming in here tonight. So, you know, there was news today on Reuters. Some of you are aware. Our stock was off materially today on that news. That's disappointing to us. We think it's unfortunate. We think there were some, you know, we don't think it was an entirely fair article. And I know the journalist, and we've spent time with him. But that's okay. This is America. Every time someone's stock falls 10 or 15 or 20%, there's legal action. So I got a text saying there's some group that's looking into, have we made misstatements? The answer is no, and we're very happy to deal with that. So we'll deal with it in due course. There's been no legal action of any kind like that prior to this. So this is a brand new thing because of today's trading.
Right, so the lawsuit was just filed today?
I don't even know if it's a lawsuit, to be honest. We'll be very forthcoming. I know nothing about it, other than I walked in today and I saw something about that. So I don't know if it's, my guess is it's going to I don't know. My guess is it's somebody looking to create a class action opportunity, which we think will have no merit, but I haven't really read it yet. So we will, yeah.
Another thing, and I'm sorry I don't know the other gentleman's name that spoke, but I noticed when we was talking about, you know, the end result, where it was going to be when this thing was closed down, I heard a lot of, we plan to, hopefully it'll happen. You know, those just aren't really good. I mean, we got to know. It can't be any ifs, ands, and buts. We got to know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And the comments tonight, by the way, I have great respect for everybody who spoke, and I know that they were heartfelt. And ours are as well, so I totally respect all that. You know, the bottom line is we're responsible for reclaiming the property and putting it in a position that is deemed acceptable by people, including the community. We're financially responsible for that. We're responsible to do it on a progressive basis. We can't just build the project and then at the end of 20, 30 years, you know, not do it. It has to be done on a progressive basis. So we're committed to that. We will be bonded for that. I don't know the scale of all the economics of that. To be honest, it's not that expensive in the overall scheme of things. So raising $840 million, there's really no reason why, and I'll say here as CEO, if the county thought it was a good idea that we set some money aside more than we're required to, I'm very happy to have that conversation. I mean, never thought about it until tonight, but we're happy to have any conversations along those lines. What I think Patrick Brindle, I think what Mr. Brindle was referring to is really at the end of the day, we have no idea what the best thing will be. It's a couple thousand acres, so there are some wonderful examples of reclaimed mining sites around the country and around the world, and Mr. Chairman, to your earlier point, we're happy to come every month. We're happy to have special meetings outside of this with the community, and we're happy to have meetings dedicated to individual topics. You know, people talk about toxic this, toxic that. We're very happy to have that conversation. This is a very different operation than I think what people expect. So on reclamation, ultimately, you know, it's not going to be up to us what happens to it at the end. If someone wants it to be a resort, someone wants it to be an industrial site, someone wants it to be, you know, hiking trails, there'll be lots of options, and we'd be happy to work with people on that.
Well, obviously, we can discuss those dollars if this were to pass, but I do think it would be a great idea to have millions in reserve in case there's a disaster, in case you guys, you know, don't make it, and the process is far along and have put these people in a position that they can no longer live the way they're used to living and where they're used to living.
Yep.
Also, I'm a licensed real estate broker in North Carolina, and I've asked this question to several people. I still can't get a good solid answer. When it comes to the blasting and it comes to the vibrations in the ground, you know, there's a thing called material fact that we deal with, we talk about all the time, every time we have a buy or sell. We need, every real estate broker that does business in this area needs to know, you know, the answer to those questions. How many miles from the blasting site is it going to be heard? How many miles is it going to be felt? We have to know the answers to those questions, and if you guys can't tell us, who can?
No, you should know the answers, and you will know the answers to those questions. As Mr. Brindle said, that'll be part of our permit application in a few weeks. So we've been working on this for years. I'm not here tonight to talk about the details of that, but that's an entirely fair question, and we'll be very happy to answer it.
You know, every broker that does business in this area has to know that, because they're going to be held liable if they don't disclose that information.
Yeah.
And some of them may already be and don't even know it, you know. Headquartered in Belmont, you know, you're buying thousands of acres in the Cherryville Township, and I'm just wondering why you just wouldn't have your headquarters on that site. And I know some of your folks have already bought property, and they've all bought, as far as I know, the ones that have bought in Belmont. Nobody's bought in the area that you're proposing to put an open mine pit. I just wondered if you could address that.
It's a great question. I mean, we have 24 employees. We plan to have over 500 if the project gets built. Of the 500, my guess is 450 will be at that site. Our biggest office will be at that site. That's a ways away. I mean, we have to go through this process. There's a couple years of construction. So right now we have essentially a makeshift office in Belmont. It's close to the airport. We have advisors and technical people flying in, and it's been a convenient location. We're very happy to have conversations. We've had people try to recruit us to Gastonia. We're very happy to have conversations about, and we will open a very large office in that area at the right time.
Okay, that's all I have at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, anything you want to bring up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you guys for coming.
Yes.
It means a lot. I mean, I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm frustrated. And the reason I'm frustrated, you've seen in my emails, people send me something to go to YouTube, go look at an article. It's not my job. It's not what I should be doing to have to figure out what the citizenry is asking me about your company. And I find it very damaging to me to have to tell these people that I don't know anything about it.
Yep.
Don't know. And it's very frustrating. That's why you did see the article that I did say I was frustrated. I'm not saying I'm against, I'm frustrated. I'm more frustrated when I came tonight and I saw this, where it says support, and you got the Gaston County logo, which is trademarked on there. No one asked, no one said anything. The media was here, and that's all they saw was a support that looked like it came from Gaston County. And you guys, first time we've laid eyes on anybody other than Melissa was tonight. I've asked many times to Brian through email, and with my displeasure very obvious. I'm sure they shared that with you and what we were doing. But why? You said you didn't have a plan ready in March, but yet you went to the Chamber of Commerce, Gaston County School, Youth Sports, Shield Museum, Price's Arena, Carolina Thread Trail, Belmont. I saw Lowell here tonight. I know Cherville's been involved. If you didn't have a plan, why did you go to those places first before you came to us? We're the ones who's wanting to know what's going on so we can tell these people so it doesn't come in with a red wave here. We're trying to figure out how we can help you do business in Gaston. We are open for business, but we can't do it when we don't know and there's so many unknown questions. That's my frustration. I want you to know that, but I do thank you for coming. My other questions are, you have a conveyor system. How will you clean that on such linear feet that you're putting that? Where does that wastewater go? You said there was no wastewater that was going to be into streams or open ground. Does the water go with it?
So let me address your first comment. I'll ask Mr. Brindle to address the conveyor. I don't think there's going to be a lot of water on the conveyor. Anything that's gone wrong in the communication with the commissioners in the county is on me. So, we were advised 2 years ago, wait till you have your thing together. They don't like to deal. That was, it sounds like we received bad advice. So, and I will say, we have 24 employees today. We had 4 employees a year ago. We went through a very difficult market. We had 4 employees for a few years. It's been a very small business. We've been focused on a lot of things. We haven't spent a lot of time on really community relations, government relations more broadly. We just haven't done a lot of that. So that's not an excuse, that's a fact. It's on me. I totally appreciate the frustration. I don't blame you. I've heard it loud and clear, and that changes tonight. And Brian's a terrific guy. You can email me from now on. I'm very happy to give him my card after. Patrick, you want to address water with the conveyor system quickly?
Yeah, thanks. And I think to Keith's point, this is the first meeting of many, we hope. We think some of those sessions will be on particular topics. Broadly speaking, the conveyor systems that will operate across our property are dry. Cleaning happens by mechanical devices, and that material is discharged back onto downstream conveyor systems. There is at places on belt conveyor systems fogging systems or dust suppression that uses misting, but they're generally not wet, and there's not a lot of water associated with or generated by them or in the conveying process. And if you'd like to have a breakout session about sources and uses of water on the property, that we're happy to do that.
I guess what I will go to is, generally speaking, as we're using the word generally, we're opening up a new plant. I guess you guys have seen it being built there on the left as you go up Dallas Cherville Highway. It's a food processing plant. One of the things that they do, they wash their fruits and vegetables over and over and over. There's a limestone fault that runs, downhill from where you guys are all the way within that 5-mile territory. So I really worry about the investments that we have. So my questions will be more as we go forward with environment, what's going to happen with the limestone fault that comes through there, and I want to try to get away from us using, generally. We need more. I know you guys are new to the mining part of it and everything. We're new to it as well. So I do thank you guys for educating us tonight on what you guys are planning on doing, and I'll yield my time, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Commissioner Hovis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple points. Your process is different in terms of how you're planning on processing the ore. It's acid and sulfite free. Has this been put in place in production, or is this still a developmental lab model?
No, good question. So it's interesting. It's called the Metso Autotech. Hard to pronounce. There are 2 Finnish companies. Metso owns Autotech. It's called it's their flow sheet, but it used to be called the Quebec Lithium process. So it operated in the 1960s. Quebec has a lot of lithium resources. Quebec used to ship material down here to Bessemer City, actually, to some extent, back in the 50s and 60s. So they use the process there. It's a process that's used in other applications in the minerals business. It's not currently used by any of the lithium producers in China. There are 4 prominent projects other than ours that are pursuing it that we know well, and I think everyone will use this process. It's better in every way, It's a simpler process. There's fewer things to buy. If we use the sulfuric acid rose process, our capital expenditures wouldn't be 840, it would be 940 or higher. So it's a simpler process. It's lower CapEx, lower capital expenditures, lower operating expenditures, and it's far cleaner, and the residue that's produced by it is easier to deal with. So it's a superior process. There isn't any large lithium project today that utilizes it. We're confident just about everybody will going forward, except for maybe the Chinese.
So currently, there's zero penetration in the market with this process.
With the audit tech process, that's correct.
Okay. That was my first question. And the conversation that Mr. Fraley was alluding to in terms of a trust, obviously, Gaston County has already gone through the lithium experiment. The year I was born, 1954, was when the FMC started mining there on Concord Church Road. That process lasted for, like you said, into the mid-'80s. And we have the largest repository of arsenic in the state of North Carolina in that hole. And we have talked about dewatering that hole when the city of Bessemer City was in great demand for water. We couldn't treat. We didn't have enough flow in Long Creek to treat. People came to us and said, you've got millions of gallons of water there at the lithium mine. Just pump it out and let it run down Long Creek. We talked with North Carolina Department of the Diener and talked with them in reference to that. I was mayor of the municipality at the time. And that's something you don't want to talk about doing. That wasn't good for anybody upstream, downstream, or whichever stream, because even though arsenic does dissipate, there are other heavy metals that are present there at the same time. So you will have to, at some point in time, do some amount of dewatering, and I heard you say that that would not go off-site, and you would not have lagoons and pits. So my question is, what will you do with that naturally occurring water that's filling those pits that are 500 foot deep when most wells in the region are somewhere between 200 and 300 feet in depth to draw water for homes?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask Mr. Brindle to address the second part. Yeah, we know a little bit about the former Hallman Beam mine that Lithium Corp had, and we know the current owners, and we don't know much about it. I literally have no idea there was arsenic there or anything else. I've never heard that before. I'm sure it's true. So we'll learn more about that. I will say, as you said, that started in 1954. It operated for 30, 40 years. And everything about their process, just like every mine in the world, is different today.
Correct.
Because processes have improved, regulations have become far different than they were in 1954. Correct. So Patrick, do you want to talk about the water and how that works? Sure. And you may know more about the arsenic than I do. I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Commissioner Hovis, thank you for the question. Pit dewatering will be fundamental to our operations. You're familiar with quarrying and the operations at Bessemer City. We separate water streams within our business enterprise into process wastewater, so effluents from our concentrate operations and our chemical operations, which we've altered, and go to industrial pretreatment, followed by municipal wastewater treatment. From pit dewatering, which, under our water quality certification with DWR, will be pumped, will pass through erosion sediment control features, and then discharge to waters. So and HDR is here, and again, we can have breakout session, but the estimate of pit dewatering within the hydrogeological models that we have now is a relatively minor fraction of the overall baseline flow of Beaver Dam Creek. And so proportionally, that's a flow that we will manage. And to the Riverkeeper's point earlier, and thanks, Brandon, for coming out, it's fantastic, that DWR water quality certification also has metrics in it to, how we will manage measurement of baseline stream flow over time relative to dewatering activities. So we have to create that balance between
a percentage not to exceed.
Well, correct, but also how we manage baseline stream flow reduction versus dewatering activity, so we can keep that system in balance effectively within the pit operations.
Correct. And what I was kind of getting to in terms of that conversation, and arsenic is naturally occurring wherever lithium is in the world. If you've got lithium, you've got arsenic. Trust me.
Yeah, so the data, as part of our federal permit application, there are a lot of different constituents in groundwater. We've conducted groundwater monitoring for many months. We have extended the opportunity to collect data from residents' wells because we want to know what's there. We've done a lot of test work that will form part of our state mining permit application with respect to many of the things that residents have raised concerns about, and they will be addressed. Those with respect to what we call acid base accounting, so whether or not rock when excavated is acid forming. If it is, what is the rock's neutralization potential? We measure those things in order to make a determination as to what the potential for putting metals into solution or metals leaching might be. The lower the acid base potential and the higher the neutralization potential, the lower the risks are. I think the data that we will present as part of our mine permit application shows, to the best of our knowledge and the work that we've done over a number of years, that those risks are very low, especially for metals that would be red flags in certain applications: lead, mercury, hexavalent chromium, things associated with maybe a coal ash impoundment. I think the data that we will present will show that, if managed properly, those are low risks.
And it's, of course, monitored continuously after whatever levels are set up. You're given benchmarks, and you can't exceed those as you continue to operate and dewater, correct?
Correct. We have continuous groundwater monitoring obligations. We'll have them under the state mining permit. We have them in our DWR water quality certification. We will be required to establish monitoring wells, or call them indicator wells, at the perimeter of our property, so that if we do find that water table lowering or changes to groundwater quantity or quality at the perimeter of our property are greater than what we have expected, then that's an early warning indicator for other receptor wells in the region. And then we have to take action upon ourselves.
Sure.
What does that mean? What's our action plan?
And in reference to Mr. Fraley's earlier comment, I think some type of an environmental trust, and that's what your CEO was just saying too. I think there needs to be some discussion of that up front, so that be a part of what we recognize, because it's not a matter of when, or not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. There'll be some impact, unintended consequences that we don't know about today. None of us I don't think, are that smart, no matter what kind of degree or what kind of letters we have behind our professional seal or whatever. We're going to find something that we don't intend to find. It's not intended, but at the same time, we are responsible to the public and to the citizens of Gaston County to recognize that. And the former Lithium Corporation mine there on Concord Church Road, and I've never heard it called the other. I've been here too long, and that's a terminology that hasn't been used for those of us who've lived here. I guess it's a technical term. But the overburden, the amount of rock pile that you see from that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there were no regulations. We didn't have countywide zoning at the time. I'm sure our conditional use permit will have a percentage of grade restriction on your development, and should we go forward in that direction. But that's one of the things that you can anticipate that this board would probably put in terms of conditional use. And we don't want to see that kind of a site again. And you've actually alluded to most of that in your conversations tonight. So for me, that was the most beneficial conversation that I've heard. But the most frightening conversation, I've heard this from many individuals who have called me, who have emailed me, who have talked to me in tears about what Ms. Prophet said in terms of threats. These people live here. They enjoy living in Gaston County, to my knowledge. None of them's told me they want to move tomorrow. But you folks are trying to start a business for a profit. And we've embraced a lot of economic development in Gaston County. But for our citizenry to be disrespected, there's not a member of this Board of County Commissioners that embraces that. And I would love to meet with you one-on-one to have this conversation. I don't think it needs to be in public, but I have great concerns about how some of those actions took place. And I want these citizens to know it matters to the 7 of us. And you may not think so, but it does matter to us. And we will fully communicate that in a manner that only Bob Hobus can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Philbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief because I probably know just enough to be dangerous. I will make a couple observations. I would agree with Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Hovis. I do think the rollout of this as far as grassroots level, to put it politely, has not been good. I think you've missed an opportunity there, and I think you're going to have to work from behind. I think it's going to be much easier to get $840 million than I think it's going to be to get community support, especially if people feel that their concerns have not been taken legitimately. So I'm a little disappointed in that. I cannot stress enough how big of an opportunity I think that's been missed there. And in my 14 years, or will be 14 years soon, on the board, out of all the companies we've dealt with from all around the world and in America, no company that I've ever dealt with has, I think, left such a bad taste in our citizens' mouth and even the commission to start out with. I think you can do a better job of that, and I think that is going to be a very high bar, and it will all be to naught if you can't get over that. And I think that's something very, very important to recognize.
May I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
Thank you. I entirely respect that, and believe me, we've heard that loud and clear, and I take it to heart. Of all the things I've heard tonight, the thing that concerns me the most is because, and it all concerns me a lot, but the thing that concerns me the most is the issue that I'm really focused on. I think Mr. Hovis mentioned it; others have as well. This issue of trust and integrity with respect to our dealings with the individuals in the area, and any issues there, I want to know about, and we will address. And I've met a number of
and I can't speak to individuals because I don't know that, but I just know as a whole, as a county commissioner, we've been completely left in the dark.
Understood.
And I just think that's a mistake. Also, would like you to know and the citizens to know, I do think the big picture here is America at some point is going to have to do some of the things that maybe aren't as sexy, such as mining and things of that nature. We enjoy a lot, but if we continue to allow China, this is not political, it's just a truth, to beat us economically and to beat us at every area or every sector, you're not going to enjoy that. So I do see the big picture. And I do see that America has, for its own security, national security, economically, militarily, that's very important. And that's coming from a Democrat president and a Republican president. That is something that I do think this board is aware of, and I think the community is going to have to be aware of. With that said, the more I've looked into this process of clean energy, the more I realize that there's really no such thing as clean energy. The one side rails the gas and oil, and then you you look at what you're going to have to do with lithium, and it's still digging mines. It makes no sense. So I guess there's a lot of money involved somewhere on both sides fighting for who wins. But I do see that big picture. It is my hope over the next year, or ever how long it takes, because I don't think this board is going to take up any type of zoning issue until the state issues a permit, that this board can take to understand the environmental impacts and things of that nature. I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not the chairman. I'm not speaking for the board. But for me, you're going to have to show, every citizen's not going to agree. I get that. But you're going to have to show that this community matters, what these folks have to say matters, and it's business. You're not going to please everyone. But that's the bar for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Understood and appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Commissioner Johnson.
It was a great presentation. It's something, because I didn't understand any of this in the beginning until tonight. At least I have my head wrapped around it a little bit more than what I've been told, because I never thought I'd be sitting here listening to stuff about mine. So it's very new to me. One of the things that the lady over here spoke about was her house, how someone come out and take pictures of her foundation and didn't come back. So one of the questions is, the people that are on the outskirts of where the mining is, what is going to happen to them in their house? I know y'all don't know the vibrations, but span of this yet. So, how are y'all going to compensate them or help them out with the foundation? If their house falls down, I don't have any idea how.
Sure. Great. So Patrick knows the answer better than me. I had an answer in mind, but I'll let him answer it since he's the technical guy. And I might come back after.
Well, and we have our principal mining engineer with us as well, so Mr. Chris Scott. So if I answer poorly, he can answer better for me. So the surveys that are conducted around the perimeter of our proposed operations are designated pre-blast surveys. They are a risk mitigation measurement or metric, and they are mandated for us to undertake by the state of North Carolina. And the state requires that we conduct pre-blast surveys on structures in adjoining properties which are less than, Chris, the distance? 500 feet from any active pit or proposed blast. The letters over time that we have sent to neighboring residents extend for a distance of 1,500 feet from our property line and our ultimate proposed permit boundary. So that's an instance where we believe, we've given an opportunity for residents in an area that extends farther than the boundary that's required by the state. Conduct those surveys free of charge, and create a record so that there is a mechanism for the company to make residents whole in the future if property is damaged. That said, as part of our state mine permit application and regulations by the state, the threshold of allowable vibration or air pressure is a fraction of the allowable vibration or pressure that would cause damage to structures. That's not to say that it will never happen, but those are the rules that are set forward by the state, and we are required by the state to place seismographs, not on our property, on the nearest adjacent structures to our property, and take those measurements. When we start our operations, we have to positively provide those measurements to the state to demonstrate that our blasting plans conform to the regulatory requirement. And after that, we have to record keep all of those measurements such that if the state would request an audit of our operations, they can get access to that at any time. Is that all correct? Okay.
Okay, I have one more question.
Sure.
This $63 million piece of equipment that you've said is going to cut back on the dust and everything else, is that going to make things quieter? This equipment, I mean, could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I guess the most visible belt conveyor systems in the region would be located at nearby steam stations that reclaim coal from the yard into the boilers. So they are mechanical equipment, typically covered by a galvanized cover. They run on electricity. They're driven by electric motors. They are a replacement for rigid frame mining trucks predominantly, and their intent is to transport ore from the various parts of our operation and waste rock from the various parts of our operation, either to our concentrator or to stockpiles on the property. So $63 million invested in belt conveyor systems is probably replacing approximately 24, about 30 rigid frame heavy haul trucks, 100-ton trucks, diesel powered, diesel engines, dusty when they traverse a mine property. And so it gives us advantage because part of the intent is we can reduce carbon emissions per ton of hydroxide substantially. We can limit dust on the property. We are less noisy. It gives us the opportunity to be less impactful to our neighbors, potentially expand the number of operating hours that we have available to us because we are less noisy.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Worley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, appreciate y'all coming tonight and being here. I think probably everyone's biggest concern is the environmental impact. I mean, the economic impact could be huge, likely unseen in our county over any time, but the environmental impact comes back. And looking at have y'all done studies that would on the zone of influence regarding impact to not only water quality but availability, and how far outside that perimeter could you expect wells to be either dried or affected?
We have done studies in the past, running concurrently with the study that we announced on the 9th of June, where we are revising what's called a dynamic hydrogeological model. So the intent of that model is to estimate the inflow, so the amount of water that will come into the pit as a result of the excavation of the pit. That model sets out the planned sequence of when each pit will be excavated. Right now on an annual basis, eventually on a monthly basis, so we can determine the hydrogeological impact of pit dewatering activities over time as some pits are in operation, and then in the future when they cease operation and new pits are in operation. That's important for us because we have to make an engineering estimation of the inflow of water. We have to size pumps and we have to power them. And we have to measure that against what the potential base flow reduction in Beaver Dam Creek might be as a result of our operation, which is included in our 401C water quality certification. And we have to make provision to do something with that water. So the updated dynamic hydrogeological model, and our folks from HDR are here this evening, will be submitted with the state mining permit application and then available for review at that time in a matter of a few weeks.
Okay. Well, I mean, is there a guess at what that could be? I know you hate to
hypothesize possibly, but I've heard it could be 5 miles outside the mine. Is that accurate or?
We believe it is substantially less than that. I would measure the potential impacts of water table drawdown in yards, not miles. And I believe the model will show that over time. That's not to say that the impacts will be zero. That's an impossibility, but we believe that data will show that they are relatively modest, measured in the, Kelly, would the hundreds of yards be a fair statement? In the hundreds of yards versus the several of miles.
Okay. And just as we were talking about bond or money set aside to mitigate the concern of clean water and available water, has there been discussions with the municipalities surrounding, such as the city of Cherryville or the city of Gastonia, with connecting their systems to provide water to those folks that are affected?
Yeah, we've had early conversations with consulting engineers that provide service to the county, through the county. I don't know if it's appropriate. If Donnie's still in the audience, I thought. Donnie, are you willing to make any comment about conversations we've had about provision of water service? Thank you.
I'd be glad to address this. We met with Keith in February of 2020 and expressed that our concern about, regardless of any model, we couldn't imagine this board voting for something that could potentially impact public health or public safety. And the best way to answer this is that we want a water line built from the city of Gaston to the city of Cherryville. The city of Cherryville is here. At some point, not for the city to take their system over, the city of Gaston to take over Cherryville, to provide long-term water solutions. If the board chose to do that, then you would be out of the risk of having someone not have water, not having adequate water to do that. So we, at the EDC, went ahead and hired LKC Engineering from Southern Pines to pay them to do a study, create a hydraulic model of what it would take to build a water line, basically from Costner School, excuse me, to Cherryville, and then for further distribution around the top of the mine site. So we roughly have that model put together and have an approximate price for it.
Thank you, Donnie.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, while Donnie's up there, I'd like to ask him one more question, if I could, before he sits down.
All right.
That's okay. How do you see this affecting other projects of economic development that we're looking to bring into county? I'm not talking about spin-offs that may come from Piedmont Lithium, but potential other businesses into the industrial parks that we have planned now that are already in existence, the Dallas-Cherryville Highway and the one we're working on in Cherryville.
Certainly. There are certain projects. The gentleman here who runs a machining facility cannot stand vibration of any sort, typically to hold tight tolerances. And so we do have people that machine in the area. We do have people that run advanced manufacturing equipment that does not like vibration. So there'll be a question about how far the vibration would go out. We do work on projects where they say we will not locate near these risk factors, and mine would be one of those essential risk factors that they would not want to be next to because either of potential dust, contamination, vibration. We don't have anybody that says they want to locate next to it, I can assure you that. And that's another purpose of the water line. If you allow the mine to be built there with the facility, now what are your economic development prospects in that area? I can't imagine that people are going to go build housing developments next to the fence. And so what are you going to do? I think the water line is also a way to provide the county the ability to make something out of that area if it's chosen to be put there, because it will not be a natural attractant for people to want to be next to. And without water service in that area, you're basically stuck with that for a couple generations.
Mr. Keith?
Ronnie, were you through?
I had one for Donnie as well.
All right. Donnie?
Sorry, Donnie. Are we having any issues recruiting jobs and investments now?
I don't think so. You've been part of those. We have at Apple Creek, we have G&T under construction. That's an initial $25 million investment. We'll go to 75. We have the board's agreed to sell property to Project Duo across the street from them. We approved and announced Project Knoll from Germany down in the middle of the park. I'll be back here next month to talk about Project Ashbury. It's a ready-to-eat food production facility of $40 million. We have about 1.8 million square feet of industrial space under construction. Some of that spec, some of that already committed to that was spec. And at Gateway 85, we're a finalist for 3 projects would add another 2.7 million square feet. So we're not desperate as in the business.
Just want to check and make sure you're still doing your job.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll make a couple closing remarks briefly. As several of the commissioners stated their frustration with the process, that horse has been beaten pretty much. You've taken ownership to it. The biggest case in my 23 years sitting here of putting the cart before that horse. And I think we can leave it there. We've beaten you up enough on that. But there's going to be an awful lot of conversation. There's going to be an awful lot of questions. We've been given a list of questions that our staff has prepared after discussions with other folks knowledgeable of the industry. And there are questions that we'll get to down the road. I would ask the manager and our clerk to get up with your team and put together a potential schedule, and then perhaps get a schedule from Piedmont Lithium, several different dates to start meetings, and then we can poll the board to see what works best for us. So that said, your team, thank you for coming out. The citizens, thank you for coming out. And I have one announcement. There's the Interfaith Trilogue. It's a Gaston County organization that was formed prior to the COVID pandemic. It's a group of Jews, Muslims, and Christians that get together and they try to find common grounds. They will be getting back for their first meeting in a year and a half, Monday, August 9th, at the Family Life Center of the First United Methodist Church, downtown Gastonia. This concludes our work session for tonight. Our next regular meeting is Tuesday, July 27th at 6 p.m. right here. Thank you for watching. If you've had any other comments or questions, please telephone our clerk.